Hey, welcome back. So I hope you had a nice break. We're going to move on to the next section of training, which is flexibility. So remember, flexibility is being able to look at something from different perspectives and being able to see it and potentially turn it into something different. In the first part of this, I showed you an umbrella and I talked about the umbrella. So I'm going to show you how first to find some objects that you can use for the children to manipulate and turn into something else, which we call a transformation. And then I'm going to show you some of the technology that you can use in order to allow them to do these transformations. Okay, so we're going to go over to my screen again. And the first thing we're going to do is come to Google, because the first thing you want to do is find an image for the students to manipulate so that they can turn it into something else, so that they can transform it. So generally speaking, I want to find a simple line clip art and something that is black and white, that does not have any color already, that would potentially narrow down what they could turn it into, okay? So when I'm doing this in the classroom, I always use black and white, but this also works when I'm doing this for the students in technology as well. So I was thinking, since we're going back to school, I'm going to do backpack clip art, black and white, okay? Black and white comes up as an option. And then you would go to images right here, and you would look at the various images that you like. Again, this one has too much going on. It's too busy. There are too many things. You want something that's just a simple line drawing that they can use in order to turn it into something. I like this one. However, do you see sometimes where it has these little boxes behind it on the background? The background's supposed to be transparent on these, and it's not always transparent. If you open it up like this and try to copy it, it might not work. But do you see how down here it looks like it's a little more white on the background, and it might not have these blocks that would show up? So rather than clicking on this image and making it larger and potentially having those blocks in the background, I can actually copy and paste from this location. So if I take my mouse and I right click, I can copy the image right here, or I could save the image if I wanted to see what would happen. So now I have that image available that I can give to the students in a couple of different ways. I'm going to come back over to my Google, because Google is what I'm going to use most of the time for the students to do these tessellations. Google is what I personally am familiar with, so I'm going to show you how I would use the technology of Google. The first one you can use is actually, again, you're going to go over here to New and go to More, and you're going to go to Google Drawings, okay? And I'm going to create and share it, because I have this shared with other people who do this as well. So this is a blank canvas. This is where students can create any kind of drawing. They can create any kind of poster or anything that they want to from this. They can add different shapes and colors and things of that nature. So you can paste that image in there, and look at that. It's right there. And they can move it around, and you can move it around. So one of the nice things about this is you can have the drawing and you can name it backpack. Whoops. Or I could actually name it backpack. And then you can have them turn this backpack into anything that they want. So how are they going to do that? You're probably wondering. How are they going to use Google Drawing to do that? There's a lot of different things that students can do within this. I'm going to show you some of the basic ones. First of all, one of the nice things about Google Drawing that they can do, that they would be able to do if they were in school, on campus, with a piece of paper, is they can turn this. So this little dot at the top, if they put the crosshairs on top of the dot, you can turn this in any direction. You can turn it diagonally, upside down, to the side, round and round. You can do anything you want with it and put it whatever direction you want. So So the first thing when they're learning how to do these is they're often taught to turn their paper around. Turn your paper, look at it from other directions, think about it from other directions, okay? Another thing that they can do with this image is if you right click on the image and you go to rotate, they can flip it. So you can flip it horizontally so it's facing the other direction. So if they wanted it to face that direction, they could. And again, you can use the back arrows and undo it just like you would undo something anywhere else. You can rotate it clockwise. So if you don't want to use the little dot on top, you can rotate it any way you want to. Clockwise, you can rotate it counterclockwise. You can flip it vertically so that it's upside down like that, okay? Any number of things they want to do, they can turn it in any direction. So just show them really simply like I'm showing you, and then let them play with it, and they can turn it any way they want, okay? So now they have this backpack, but what are we going to turn it into? Well, let's say I'm looking at the backpack, and often when we look at things, we see faces. It's what our brain does, and it makes a face. So I can see how maybe this is a mouth, and I could probably add some eyes here, and I could turn this maybe into some kind of little monster or something. So I'm starting to get some ideas of what I can do. So if I'm a student, I'm like, okay, well, do I just get a pen and draw with it? What you're actually going to want them to do is come up here to insert, and they're going to choose a shape. There are numerous shapes already in here for them. There's arrows, there's call outs, there's equation shapes, okay? So let's say they wanted to make some eyes. Let's say they wanted to make some eyes that look like this, but the eyes are turned more this direction. Well, first they choose this, and then they make it kind of whatever size they want, and they can play around with it as much as they want. And then they can turn it, and then they can move it over to here and make it a little bit smaller if they want to. However they want to do it, and they can kind of get it set on there and get it the way they want. And then you can teach them some shortcut keys. So if they're on this and they want another eyeball, they could hit Control and C to copy it, Control and V to paste it, and they have another one already ready. And there they've made some eyes. And then they could add some little circles in to have some more eyes and give their little creature some eyes. One of the nice things about this too is each of these little shapes that they choose, they can come up here to the fill color, and they can change what color they're filled in with. So maybe this is going to be a robot. And so they want the robot to be all gray. They can change the fill color so that it's gray. And they can change the outline color if they want the outline to be a darker gray, or if they like it black, they can leave it black, or they could change it. Maybe they want it to be a red, and they can change the size of the line just by going here, and each size up they make it obviously is going to be thicker. So they would change it in that regards, okay? So these are little things that they can do very easily and just play around with it and make their robot, monster, whatever they're going to make. And they can keep adding to this, okay? This black and white image that they've got, they can come over here to Format Options. And in this, they can go to Recolor. And they can actually even change this so that it has different hues and different colors. So if they wanted it to be, you know, a Martian and it's green or something, or they can change it like that. Maybe they're making a ghost, or they can return it back. It can be grayscale. Okay. Sepia tones, no recolor if they just like it the way it is. They can do all of these different things with it and change it to be different colors to whatever they want it to be, okay? Again, there's some limitations in here because the recolor only has the options that the tool has in it, but again, they can do those options, okay? The other thing they can do is they can insert something that they find in the web. So let's say they want to look up a robot on the web, and maybe this robot has a robot friend, or he's being built by other robots. And so they could click on that robot and insert it. And then maybe this robot is then, you know, here over here, and he's working on this robot. And maybe I give him a tool and he's like building a robot friend or something. So they can add images then from the internet and make it more interactive. They can insert an image, maybe upload from their computer, something they've drawn. Maybe they wanted to draw it. They can add word art. They can add lines. Do you see that there are so many possibilities under insert of what they can do? They can even go to their camera and take a picture. Maybe, you know, they wanted it to be, it was a ghost or something, and they wanted it to be a ghost that was like in their bedroom, or a scary monster that hid in their closet, and they took a picture with their camera and went and put, you know, a picture of their bedroom in there and then built that on top of that. There are so many ways that they could do this and add things to this. I just love Google Drawing. It allows them to be extremely creative. And they can show that flexibility. They can show, hey, this is an umbrella, this is a backpack, this is a shield when it started, and then now it's this new thing. So with Google Drawing, you can start one on your own, and you can just put the backpack in there or whatever you choose, and then you can share that link with the students and they can make their own copy of that, and then they can create from there, okay? So I'm going to show you, basically, this is going to be the same thing, but with Google, you're going to use Google Slides instead. And you're basically going to be letting them do the same thing. It has the same types of tools in it so that they can work in slides. This is one of the fun things that I wanted to show you about slides, a couple of the fun things about slides. First of all, you can go to page setup right here. So if you go to file and you go to page setup, you can actually choose custom and choose 8.5 by 11 and apply. And it will turn it this way like it's a booklet. So if you wanted to do this for ELA and you were doing something and they were making a booklet or a book cover that they were doing some flexibility on, you could turn it this direction. Or you could also go to custom and do 11 by 8.5, which is then just this, basically this widescreen like this, and it would be like a piece of paper, okay? Oops, that was not what I wanted. I wanted my backpack. I forgot that I did that. So I'm going to come back to my backpack, and I'm going to Control V, and I'm going to paste it on there, okay? And let's say this time I'm going to turn it into a rocket ship, okay? So I'm going to rotate it. Again, you can do all the rotating, and I'm going to turn it this direction. And then I'm going to insert some shapes, and I'm going to insert this kind of shape, but I'm going to turn it around, and these are the rocket boosters at the bottom, and then I just got to turn it a little bit so that it like kind of lines up there. And then I want 2 of them. So again, Control C and Control V, and maybe I need to make them smaller and they can tweak it, right? So as they're doing this, the nice thing that you can show them about slides is, let's say they've started to build their rocket and they've got their rocket booster going, and they want to show their rocket is taking off into space, okay? And so we're going to pretend in our minds that I've created my rocket and I've added some fins on here and a nose cone and I've colored it and everything. And now my rocket's ready, and I've inserted an image from the web of Cape Canaveral. And let's see, oh, here. Let's just say I insert that. And I put it in the background, which they can make it larger just like this. You just use these little blue squares and make it larger, and then you right click on it and order and send it to the back. And so now my rocket is on top of Cape Canaveral, but I want to show it going up into space and up and up and up and up and up. So what I can do is I come to this slide over here, and then I duplicate the slide, okay? So now I have it, and maybe it's resting. And here, maybe I insert a shape, and I do a call out, and I do it right here, and this is like some fire, and I make it red and orange because I'm a kid and I think it's fire and it's so awesome, and I make a couple of those, and it's blasting off, right? And I'm blasting off, and then I want to show it again, but it's up in the sky, so I duplicate it, and then I can get rid of this background, and I can insert an image from the web, and I can just put the sky. And oh, this is beautiful. I love this one of the sky, and I insert it. And again, I'm going to show them that they can make it large so that it fills up their space. And then they right click on it and they order it, and they send the image to the back, and now my rocket is flying through space. Into the sky, into space, and in the next one, I could go and I could make space, and now I've created this story for my rocket. So my rocket started at Cape Canaveral, and then it's blasting off, and then it's in the sky, and then I'm going to go into space, and maybe I meet the International Space Station. So now I've created this whole flow for my flexibility, really quick, rapid backgrounds that I haven't had to draw or create, but I've put my idea, my image into something real world, and I've made this connection. So like my student I was talking about earlier that loves wolves, maybe she turned this into a wolf den or something, and then she can put some real world pictures of wolves there, like napping outside of it and playing outside of it, and she's getting to add all of her wolves without having to go and create all these wolves with these shapes. And maybe she wants to create wolves with shapes, so that's something that she does. And so she's adding this background, and she's adding these details to this backpack that she looked at that was originally one thing and now has turned into something else. Okay, so that's one of the things that I love about Google Slides is they can turn it into this progression, and then they can actually create a presentation where it goes through at a certain time frame, and they can turn it into videos. But that's all a whole nother training about things that they can do with Google Slides. Google Slides tends to be kind of endless and boundless with what you can do, and there's so many things. But really basically just up front, teach them how to rotate, teach them how to recolor, teach them how to add shapes to it, teach them how to Control C to copy, Control V to paste, so that they can do multiples of things if they want to do it multiple times to have it added. So if they're, making a turtle or something like you saw on one of mine earlier, and they had the shield and that became the shell, but then they needed their turtle to have 4 limbs. Well, rather than creating the limb individually, they can create one limb, duplicate it 4 times, and then turn it as need be and put it on there and recolor things as they need it and things like that. So that's nice. Google Slides and Google Drawing, both of those are options. The other thing with Google Slides is I told you, you may have students that don't feel like they're artistic and they can't draw. This gives them a chance to already have the shapes and the things available, and it gives them a chance to have these wild backgrounds that are already available that they don't necessarily have to draw. And when you're using Google Slides and you go to insert these images from the web, these are images that we have permission to use that are free to anybody to use, so they're not copyright protected, so you don't have to worry about any of those things as well. And then the other thing about Google Slides is you can use those writing prompts as well if you want to, and you can just put the prompt on a Google Slide and you can say a backpack is not used for carrying books when it is used for whatever. And then they can do that, and maybe they could look up pictures on the web of somebody using a backpack to carry their dog, to carry their little brother, to carry bricks. So, you know, the little pigs carry bricks so that they can go make their house, you know, so that the big bad wolf doesn't come in, or any number of things. And then Google Slides is allowing them to add in these images of the things that they've found, and it's adding them to put these sentences together so that they're writing sentences as well, so that you're practicing sentences. So that's really great. One of the things that I wanted to go over really quickly also with using this in technology is to do this in Schoology or in Google Classroom as a lesson. So flexibility is something that I use in conjunction with things that we're learning so that the students will look at something from a different perspective, okay? The way I do that, and let me show you my screen again. The way I do that is I use ologies, okay? Ologies and ologists, which are a study, obviously, of something, of a branch of something else, right? So the objective is for them to think about something. In this particular one, it's weathering, erosion, and deposition factors from the perspective of two different ologists. And then I ask them some questions. How would the ologist use weathering or erosion in their line of work? And I make a template down here for them to answer those questions in before they create something, okay? How would the ologist use deposition? Why are weathering, erosion, and deposition useful in their line of study? And name a factor that they would use in their field of study. And then I pick one that I think would be difficult for them or one that they wouldn't choose. So they can't use whatever I chose in my example, right? So I gave them the dendrologist, they study trees, and then it talks about this, and I won't read all of it for you, so you don't have to know everything about dendrologists. So you're probably thinking, well, how do they know what ologists to use? Well, thoughtco.com has a really great list of science ologies in alphabetical order. So if you're using the scientists, you can use that and they can go from that list. It's a very extensive list, so they can go through all of this. Northside also has a list. So if you want to get with your GT specialist, we actually have a list that's a Word document. The links are no longer working on that one though, so that was why I recommend this. And what I teach my students to do is once they find one that they think that they are interested in, they can then copy and paste that word into Google and they can do some research, which then has them using the technology to do some research about what these ologists do in real life so that they can look from that perspective. So it gives them a little bit of a chance to go through and do that. And then I've also done it for books. So we read Homeless Bird in the 6th grade in English Language Arts. And so I wanted them to think about Homeless Bird from the perspective of an ologist. For Homeless Bird, I gave them some specific ologists because there were specific things in the book I wanted them to think of. They talk about the Ganges River in the book and some of the things that they go through there. So I wanted them to think about it as far as cleanliness of the water, and because they talk about that a bit. And so I specifically led them to this ologist. So that's another way you can do, is you can narrow it down for them, but they're still being flexible because they're still thinking about a fictional story, but from the perspective of a real life thing. The Ganges River is real life, and from a real life perspective of a hydrologist who's somebody who studies water, who looks into water and what people do with water and how people use water. So that's a way that you can do that. There are numerous things that you can do to have them showcase once they're done with that part of the lesson, showcase what they've done. In the next section of originality, I'm going to show you one of them, which is called Canva. It's one that I use often for these ologist things because I generally have the students create a wanted poster. They can create a wanted poster in drawings. I've had lots of students do that. They can create it in slides as well. So that is something that they can do. You can have them do something creative on their own, any way that they want to show this flexibility of how this ologist is thinking about it. Any of these technologies that we've done so far, you can even go back and have them do the word art, and they can create some word art for the ologists. And you know, if they looked up the hydrologist and they're looking at pH and salinity and cleanliness of the water and H2O and hydrogen and oxygen and different words that they learned, you could even have them combine fluency and flexibility and come together in that way as well. So there are kind of endless possibilities of what you can do once you start getting used to this and once you start doing this. But for now, just when you're thinking of flexibility, for this flexibility part, you're really thinking of them looking at something from a different perspective or from a different way. So with Google Drawings and Google Slides, they're taking some image and they're turning that image into something new. And then if you're doing it for an assignment and you want an ologist, they're taking something that you're learning and they're looking at it from somebody else's perspective and how would they use that learning. So for weathering, erosion, and deposition, I would tell them they're not allowed to use a geologist because that's too simple. Obviously, a geologist is using those in theirs, so how would somebody else use that? Okay, so those are some things that you can do. Those are some technologies that you can use. We're going to take a little break from this, and then we're going to move on to our O part, our originality, and talk about some technology we can use with that. Okay.